Good afternoon, everyone. So I hope that many of you made it from the coffee break for this very um, interesting topic, energy efficiency. We hear it all over, and I'm very thrilled today to host a great panel, diverse panel, and I hope we will have a very interesting discussion. So I might introduce, I will start with Carlos. Carlos Sanchez Rivero is leading the financing for energy efficiency team at DG ENER at the European Commission. We have then Miguel Ángel Amores coming from Triodos. No need to introduce the track record of Triodos. And Miguel Ángel there leads the energy efficiency and renewable energy team. And then we have Markus Seifert. Markus is chairman of Define, European company led in the Nordic operations, but also, most importantly, he was involved in the work of IFIG. IFIG, for the few of you who do not know, Energy Efficiency Financial Institution Group that deliver interesting reports to the Commission on energy efficiency in the past. So welcome, everyone. And just to introduce the topic, because energy efficiency is not new. It's around for quite some time already, but it's in the past 2 years that we hear it. It's back on the agenda for governments, for banks, for other financial institutions. And this is mostly linked to the geopolitical crisis that put back under the spotlight concept like energy security, energy prices, and also if we look at the cost of living and inflation, this also brought back energy efficiency on the agenda. But the reason why we have it today on the agenda is because of the role of energy efficiency in meeting climate targets. This it's since quite some time that it's understood out there. If we consider the one of the net zero scenario from the IEA, look at energy efficiency as giving 1/3 of the contribution to cut greenhouse gas emission in a net zero scenario. In a net zero scenario. The role of governments in that, very important. Late in June, we heard about the Versailles Declaration that was signed by 45 countries in the world. They just commit to double the effort to improve the rate of energy efficiency improvement. So, and they also look at this as the decade for action for energy efficiency. So back on the agenda for many governments. Here, European Commission will also tell us how this is at the center of the EU energy policy, energy efficiency first. That's what we heard as well. But there is a role to play for all other actors in the economy, in the financial sector, but also in the real economy. We are going to elaborate a bit more on that during the panel. And then just one thing that we being here at UNEP, we need to remind the energy efficiency contributor to meet climate targets. But when we look at energy efficiency under the Principle for Responsible Banking, Net Zero Banking Alliance, we look at climate, but we also look at other areas as well, other sustainability areas. We can name nature, we can name also the social aspect that energy efficiency measure can help to improve. One example above all is having affordable, efficient housing. We heard, I think, in the panel before this, and we will hear it. We'll hear it more and more. So, if I just ask our panel for a very preliminary comment on. You can elaborate during the question later, but if you want to volunteer a quick comment on, is energy efficiency now here to stay? Is it the moment that it will pick up? or are there challenges ahead of us? I don't know. Can I maybe ask Markus to start on that?
So if I can hit the right button. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So I think we are at the turning point at the moment. So for energy efficiency, because I mean, you know, I'm a physicist. I know what energy efficiency is actually and what you can do when you are energy efficient. However, we see a lot of movement now in the market. We had it about the Ukraine crisis. People were very aware how important energy efficiency is. Unfortunately, this has declined a bit recently, so energy is much more cheaper. And the question is really how we keep the momentum. How can we really push this forward and keep the momentum we have been building up to push this through on all levels? So meaning in the regulation side, but also towards the people that understand what they should do, how they should do, to really keep it up and reduce our energy consumption in the very end, and of course CO2 emissions. So I think it's really the key turning point at the moment.
Miguel, any preliminary take on this?
Yeah, I think energy efficiency is a key element to tackle three crises, as you mentioned. The first, the environmental crisis. So it's absolutely, renewable energy generation is really important. But as we always say, the greener kilowatt hour is the one that you don't consume. And energy efficiency is absolutely key for that. Second, as you mentioned, energy efficiency is really, really important for also for social inclusion, energy poverty. So is the one of the elements to include part of the society that are suffering for very high prices. So it's part of the solution. And also, as we have suffered in the European Union the last 2 years, it's really, really important to push the economy forward. We are suffering in the past for very high natural gas prices and fossil fuel prices, and at the same time it creates a political dependency. So, and then in the European Union, we are a very big consumer and a producer for energy, and energy efficiency as with the renewable energy is part of the solution. So I think that in the last 2 years, probably energy efficiency has grew a lot, and we have to take this opportunity to continue to push forward, because as I mentioned, there are very, very important problems in the long term that could be partially solved by the energy efficiency.
Carlos.
Thank you, Flora, and good afternoon. Yeah, I think energy efficiency is here to stay. I would say that this is very, very important, because energy efficiency, and I will explain this later on, I think is strategic for the EU and for our economy, and to be able to deliver on our objectives, but also on our targets.
Very good. Just if I can stay with you and just to go deeper into this point. So how do you see the role of regulation in accelerating energy efficiency?
Yeah, thank you, Flora, very much. Regulation is fundamental. It's fundamental for energy efficiency. The energy efficiency legislation is a precondition. If we want that our continent is able to deliver on the objectives that we have set for ourselves for 2030, for 2040, and for 2050. And Flora, as you rightly say, there has been lately in the last years an increased impetus, an increased focus on energy efficiency. So it's now back on all the discussions that we are having. No? And why this is? I said it is strategic, and definitely it is strategic, because when we see now energy efficiency, we realize that it is one of the top policy priorities of the EU, of the Commission. It's at the center of the European Green Deal, first of all, with our commitment to become climate neutral by 2050. But it is also at the center of the REPowerEU plan and how to become independent of Russian fossil fuels by 2027. But energy efficiency is also fundamental when we talk about energy security challenges. It's also fundamental when we talk about energy prices and how we can respond in case of crisis. We have seen that, unfortunately, the previous year. And because of that, the EU has strengthened very significantly its legislation on energy efficiency. The revised 2023 Energy Efficiency Directive that will be published very soon on the 20th of September. That was first adopted in 2012 and it was revised already in 2018. But we're talking about that. We have seen as the EU the need to revise it again, to be able to deliver in particular with a focus on how to achieve the first step of our challenge, that is 2030. And this revision comes with a significant strengthening of the fundamental provisions. We have now an ambitious European energy efficiency target. I've also set very important national contributions towards this target. We are almost doubling the energy savings obligation, so this is probably the main provision of the Energy Efficiency Directive. So we are doubling the annual obligation rates by 2030. We are setting ambitious provisions on the role of the public sector, how they need to achieve the annual energy savings, how they need to renovate their building stock each year, also with annual targets. We are setting strong provisions on heating and cooling. We are setting, as you said, Flora, at the beginning, the energy efficiency principle within our legislation, becoming a central element of all the investment decisions and all the legislative decisions that we'll be making in the next years. So this is really ambitious, what we are doing with the Energy Efficiency Directive. Together with the proposal of the Commission for the review of the energy performance of buildings directive, that it is translating into this legislation, what was the ambition set in the EU renovation rate, that it's aiming at two things: doubling the renovation rates in Europe and really focusing pretty much into deep renovations. So this is now under negotiation. So together, if we see the Energy Efficiency Directive, the energy performance of building directive, so we have created very strong legislative framework. But this creates now very important challenge for member states. And not only, but first of all for member states. And this challenge is now we need to enforce our legislation. So we need to enforce what we are setting in the EU. And the legislation, we cannot really forget. I mean, it's really central. So this is done to be able for the EU to deliver on its commitments, to become climate neutral, but also on the energy efficiency commitment and targets. So to achieve that, member states, they will need to create enabling frameworks that are, first of all, effective. And when I say effective, is that they really deliver energy savings. So at the end of the day, what we need here to do is to save energy. That they are also sustainable in the medium and the long term. This is very, very important because what we are talking about here is we are talking about 2030, but 2040 and 2050. So we need to put in place frameworks that are really devised for that. And finally, also, we need to devise frameworks that are predictable with the time. This is very important for all the actors involved.
It's quite a comprehensive package, and we see also in other areas the activity of the Commission and the Member State to follow. But if I can also ask you, stay with you again, so the role of government in regulation, but what else can government and supranational do to increase the uptake on energy efficiency measures?
Well, I think, as I said, enabling frameworks are fundamental. Financing is fundamental. I will try to focus today on two elements, and I think that are very, very important, and governments can do more, but I will also put the EU the EU level angle as well here. And it's dialogue and cooperation. It's dialogue and cooperation with all the key actors that are relevant for energy efficiency. And I'm talking here about project promoters, I'm talking about energy companies, I'm talking about the industry, I'm talking about the real estate sector, and of course I'm talking about financial institutions. Because financial institutions, I mean, you really have a central role to play when it comes to energy efficiency. Our estimate says that 85% of the investment needs will need to come from private sector. We need to come from individuals, we need to come from enterprises, SMEs, etc. So we need you, I mean, we need banks, the EU need the banks provide financing for energy efficiency. So this is a condition. So without that, we'll not be able to deliver on our objectives. So you also have, it's not only that we are demanding, but you also, I think, has a very important business opportunity ahead of you. Because energy efficiency investment needs are huge. As I said, they are central to the policy priorities of the EU, and they are here to stay. Commission estimates says that up to 275 billion euros will need to be used for energy efficiency investments per year. So if we put that in perspective, we are talking about 1% of the EU GDP. So this is massive, what we are talking about here. And this is something, as I said, that is here to stay by 2030 and beyond. So we believe firmly on this. We believe on the need of dialogue, on the need to cooperate all together, and this is why we are now in the last stages of preparing a new initiative that the Commission is planning to launch. That will be a European coalition on energy efficiency financing, where basically the idea will be to put together member states, Commission, and financial institutions. And this, of course, with the collaboration of UNEP-FI. It's not something fully new, because we have been working already in the European, in the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group. It's EFIC Group. Here we have today Markus, that's a key central player of the work that we have done there. And we have been working there for 10 years, but we want to go beyond that, and we want to put now, as I said, 3 layers of it. So one, it will be high-level commitment. Second, it will be the technical work at EU level. And the third one will be to have national hubs to take action on the spot.
As I was saying, quite impressive, comprehensive package. I will revert immediately for a quick comment, because I've been asking, beside regulation, what is the role of government? And from, let's say, the private sector perspective, also, how would you see, like, beside regulation, role of government?
I think, in general, part is based on regulation, but one of the important key elements of energy efficiency is that you save a lot of money in the long term. So that's you save, of course, energy, but the consequence is that you save money, but always in the long term. So I agree that regulation is really important, but at the same time, probably there should be a change in the mind of in general society and the companies, and think about the long term, not only short term. That is one of the basics of the energy efficiency.
Markus.
Yeah, so I can only agree here. I think governance play a very key role in really getting this job done. And I think it's now, as Carlos so rightly said, we're going into this implementation phase of everything. So we have seen a lot of regulatory initiatives, and I think this is now really the challenge to get this into practice and really make it working. And And I think for this, the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Coalition is actually a very good idea. And I think this will be a lot of activity to really get this into the minds of everybody, from the banks starting, but also into the companies, into small and medium businesses, and then also like into private persons, which I think is quite a challenge. And maybe to just highlight one thing here, because I think actually the EFIC, so the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group, has done a very good job here, and we also have the mastermind of that one here. So Peter has done a tremendous job here the last 10 years, so thanks a lot for that one, because I actually have only supporting that since 2018, so it's, my part is a bit shorter. But I think what this group has been doing is really creating the fundamentals. So a lot of interesting reports, and just to name a few of them. So we had this risk assessment report, for example, with, I think for the more or less first time could show that if you finance energy efficiency investments, you take less risk in a bank. And actually I was very skeptical if this could be ever proved. It turned out we found really 3 case studies where we could see that effect. And I think this is now really one of the key elements I'm always using when I'm talking to banks. Basically, look at this, one can do this, you can model this, there's statistics behind that. And this is really a huge push, because people are always asking, yes, we have no data, we cannot do this, we don't know what exactly is going on. I think there are very clear cases where you can actually do that. And I think we have to take the opportunity. And for this, EFIC has been really doing a great job to promote this, not only with the risk assessment, but also multiple benefits to what is the impact for the consumers, basically, to see what kind of European data sets we have. And actually, there also turned out we have a lot of data sets. And for example, you can look into like the Muir database. It's really cool. You have a nice country profiles there, what the energy savings have been, and so on. So really, a lot of things are going on there. And so I would say the conceptual framework has been laid down with the help of EFIC. And yeah, the Commission obviously picked up on that, so that's also very good. And now it's really going into this implementation phase. And this is also what I'm, let's say, doing in my daytime job, really try to get this into the institutions, get them to know how to implement this, also from the risk management perspective, from the loan perspective. And this is still, there's some way to go to be there to really easily finance, like standardized solutions. People understand that it's not too much effort to actually renovate your home.
We will deepen also the conversation on data that you mentioned, because it will be a very relevant one, so keep it there for a moment. I'll go back to the different things and roles that regulation and other instruments can have out there. So how do you see also other type of action, like standards, labels? How do they relate to regulation, and what would be the different leverages that they can have?
Yes, I think we need them all. I think we need regulation, we need labels, we need the standards, we need incentives. And I think what the art will be is how we put all these things together, how we create the frameworks. And here we are normally talking about how to create this framework at the national level, within the national sphere, in a way that works. And again, I think it's very simple, but at the end of the day, this is the substance of where we're aiming at with all of our energy efficiency policy. So we want to save energy. So we need to put in place this framework that works in a way that can deliver savings at scale. And it is an effective way of putting that together. So all this is needed. So what it is important is how we put all together and how we create this framework that in a way that will work now, and it will work and will be able to be adapted for the challenges that we have in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and beyond. And I think for that we need to be able, and member states also need to be able, with all the actors involved, to create adequate strategies. I mentioned before that we need collaboration with all key actors, and this is fundamental. We need to trigger investment decisions on individuals and small enterprises. So this is fundamental. Most of the efforts that we are going to do on energy efficiency in the future, they are depending on that. Of course, it's not the only thing. There's also energy efficiency investments on the supply side with big corporations. But most of the efforts will need to come from decisions of individuals. So we need to be able to understand that, and we need to be able to trigger these decisions. So we need to develop skills. This is also fundamental. So we need to develop skills at the public level, national, regional, local level. We need to develop skills within the financial institutions. So we need expertise in financial institutions. We need dedicated teams. And for that, probably you also need technical assistance that can also support and facilitate this process. Yeah, just summarizing. I think all that, the importance of creating financing frameworks and that are sustainable. And that means that we need to use public support wisely. I referred before and I explained to you, Miguel, that according to our estimates, public funding can do 10% of the or 15% of the effort. So we need to be able to develop financing schemes that can use this little part of public financing, but still very important, to leverage private investments, to help financing tools, financing products at the scale. I think this is the challenge.
And this is a very good bridge to the question I wanted to ask Miguel. In fact, so in this public-private ratio of financing, what do you think is there an optimal mix?
Yes, Carlos mentioned 10-15% of public, the rest of course private could be good percentage. But I think first of all, what we should to understand why we need public administration. Well, basically, I think the private institutions should play the main role in energy efficiency. But of course, due to the characteristics of this kind of projects, energy efficiency, due to the characteristics of the companies that are involved in, it's true that in certain cases, public administration is needed. To give you some examples, as you know, there are very different kind of projects of energy efficiency, but part of them are carried out by ESCOs and energy service companies. These energy service companies has balance with very high debt, basically because, as you know, they carry out the investment and they receive in the long-term cash flow that repay this investment. So, but you as a financial institution, when you see the balance sheet of these companies, you see, oh, it's difficult to finance them, and most of them has limited size, so it's not very big companies with a strong balance sheet. So you have this high risk than in other kind of loans with other borrowers. Other kind of energy efficiency projects, for example, is the renovation of buildings. Typically, the payback period of this investment could be even 20 years. So if you don't have a mortgage as a collateral, you could have higher risk also. And then other kind of projects could be to increase to reduce the energy consumption, but maybe, for example, solar rooftop panels, or the change of the equipment of the company, or as I mentioned, renovation of the buildings. You have an end consumer that again don't has a very strong balance sheet, or just they are natural persons that some could be affected by energy poverty, or it could be housing associations that has some legal challenges, depending, of course, on the legal framework of each member state. But you can have some legal challenges. Or, as I mentioned, could be consumers, SME companies, industrial, commercial companies that again you don't have a best strong situation from a financial perspective to provide you a loan, or to provide to ESCO a loan that is based on the payments that receive from this final consumer. So in all these cases, you have high risk, and our view is that the role of the public administration in these cases is more effective if they provide a kind of guarantees, a kind of extra collateral that could compensate this high risk to promote banks to provide these loans. But we think that this is in general, the most effective way, because there are other possibilities, for example, subsidies. In this case, what we have seen in different countries is that when you provide directly subsidies for renovations or rooftop panels, etc., you are increasing the price of the investment. there are very high profits in different players, but it could be much more efficient if these public funds are used, as I said, as a collateral for finance institutions. Yeah, and there are very good examples. For example, the tool of the Investment EU, there is a guarantee provided by the European Investment Fund that could cover this kind. Could be very, very useful. And also, for example, in Spain, we have the guarantees from the public institution ICO it was linked with the Ukraine crisis. So from our perspective is much more effective, even if the public institution provide directly the finance, because typically public institutions need very, very high loan amounts to be efficient as the European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund or European Investment Bank. So I think that the combination of finance institutions supported by public guarantees could be the much more efficient to support this energy efficiency.
And if we turn more specifically on the role of the banking system in the financing energy efficiency, so how do you see this, and what do you see the challenges, why this has not probably expressed full potential yet in the role of banking?
Yeah, there are several reasons. One, as I mentioned, because of the higher risk of certain energy efficiency investments, you need some kind of collateral that compensates this high risk. Other is, for example, the size of the investment. For example, solar rooftop panels. So if it's for private, you need could be provide loan by loan. Of course, it's as a consumer loans. But of course, if you have a bigger size, could be much more efficient, and in this case, and you can compensate the risk with different consumer. You can provide better prices for consumers. There are tools that are, for example, that we have in Triodos now. It's securitization funds that is very popular, for example, in the United States for finance solar rooftop plants. These kind of tools could be quite useful especially for very small loans, but with a important number of finance borrowers. Other tool that could be very useful is when you have a portfolio of projects that could compensate the risk of the final consumer. So that is something that we also are promoting in Triodos Bank. We provide project finance for solar rooftop installation with a portfolio of SME companies that is really, really interesting, because you can compensate the risk of each of these consumer, of these off-takers. So, but of course, you have the problem of the size, as I mentioned, because general energy efficiency finance are for small investment. And there are other reasons. Of course, I think in general, banks should be look at in more detail this finance. It's good because in the last probably 2-3 years, at least in Spain, bigger plants are also promoting for privates these products, but it's quite recently. So, but of course, and as was mentioned by Markus previously, we have to change our mind. When I say we as banks, as bankers, that energy efficiency investments should be considered as a way to reduce your cost, probably to reduce your risk. No, it's just an additional cost. So it's make your balance sheet stronger. Of course, depends on the company, depends on the investment, but I think that there should be a change in the mind of the bankers, that it's an opportunity and it's reduced risk. It's not high risk because you have to put money. You are saving money in the long term, so you are making your company more competitive in the market. And in the last factor, of course, is the demand. So as we mentioned, the demand has grown the last 2 years, basically for economic reasons. But yeah, there should be a change, important change in the society in general, in the company, in the industry, that it's really, really important, energy efficiency, for the competitive of the economy, and of course for the environment, and that it's very long-term investment, depending, of course, it's not the same, the renovation of building or change of the lighting of etc. of the company, but should be an increase of the demand. And of course, there is an increase of the demand. Banks, small and big banks, will be willing to offer this product.
Mostly a demand. And Markus, you commented already partly on that, but would you like to add after what Miguel has contributed?
Yeah, maybe to just pick up on what Miguel just said, because I think it really, it hits the point here. So I think when we take it from a bank internal perspective, so lending to energy efficiency, whatever it is, I mean, ESCOs or other companies or private persons, I mean, at the moment, it's like, it's still like manual work. It's something where you have to go into depth, you have to understand it. Sometimes you even need a project manager who can actually support this kind of complicated thing, because I mean, even just putting a heat pump to a house is not always trivial. So you have to have this kind of manual work at the moment to really get this done, get this approved. There's still a lot of uncertainty. Will this ever pay off? How long will it take? You know, all these considerations. And I think, I mean, from a banking perspective, it's always good to reduce uncertainty. So uncertainty is the killer. If it's certain, you can calculate the risk, you can calculate the costs, you can lend or not. So that's, I think, the key point. And this is something we have to come to still. So what's currently lacking is the kind of the scale, so that we can make it as a retail loan, and it's just straightforward. We know exactly what we're doing, no difficult assessments needed, and these kind of things. This is something we definitely have to work upon. And I mean, we touch upon this later on, I guess, but digitalization and really looking at how to have clever ways on getting this information to be able to be really on scale. This is the key thing.
Carlos, if you want to say a few words on how do you see the role of banks in the energy efficiency improvement as well?
Yes. Yeah, I think pretty much concur with what Miguel and Marco have been saying so far. I think banks are key actors here for different reasons, because we are talking in most of the cases about individuals, small companies, first of all. So they are not experts, they will not be experts, they will be in need of financing. And also because we need to, I mean, we are talking about a small investment. So what also happens most of the time, there is a need of an aggregator. So the aggregator may come from other places, may come from the financial institution itself. But they play a fundamental role. And just to refer, I think just presented the figures. I mean, if 85% of the investment needs to come from the private hands, I think the role of banks is absolutely clear. You mentioned already quite good things that we are doing, because we cannot say that we are starting from scratch. We are not. So I've been working on efficiency financing for years and years and decades, right, Peter? And we, for instance, from the EU budget, we are supporting energy efficiency very significantly, and we are trying to find these ways how to connect, how to blend the public support with the private one, with the financing from financial institutions. And yeah, I think we are doing that quite well. I think another view quite relevant as well, that also represents and give an understanding on how the EU is taking seriously energy efficiency is how much the EU budget is providing support to energy efficiency now in the period 2021-2027 compared to the previous programming period that was 2014-2020. Well, it's 4 times more. So, and we are talking about money. So that gives you quite a good example. But we are working on that. So we are using InvestEU, as you said, through the European Investment Bank, through the European Investment Fund, through national promotional banks, to work with financial institutions that work at retail level to devise and to provide solutions. But there is much more that we need to do in the future. So I think we are still in a phase where that grants are predominant in the energy efficiency market, and the ambition and the regulation is so ambitious that the only way to deliver on that is to go to a situation completely different, and where basically we'll use grants to provide an incentive, or we'll use grants for the most vulnerable ones to address energy poverty. In those cases, yes. But otherwise, what we need to do is to help financial institutions. I fully agree with Miguel what you said at the beginning. You need to be the central players in this project.
If I go, because until now we touched the supply side, if you want, but on the demand side, even though when policies, incentives, everything correct and good is in place, there's still, for instance, something to be done to stimulate demand on behalf of household or SMEs. So how do you see that? I look at Markus. You want to?
Yeah, so that's also something where I can actually refer to one of those EFIC reports. I think it's not yet out, but it hopefully is coming soon. So how to stimulate demand in energy efficiency investments. And that's, of course, a tricky one. It's not easy because I think we have now the regulation quite well in place. So like also the initiatives towards minimum energy performance standards. So there's a lot of things in there which now has to be implemented. So I think it's quite clear where to head for. But of course, what we still have to do is that we need to convince the consumers to actually take this up. Because, I mean, you cannot force, or usually you don't force somebody to actually renovate his home. So how can we do that? And I think the point is here that we have also seen this recently. People are very, let's say, rational and economic when it comes to money, if there is the need. If the need is significantly, or is perceived as significant. You see, if the energy prices are high, everybody was very keen on, yes, I have to renovate my home. So people are rational, I would say. And of course, we have to use that. So we have to make it clear that energy prices are, maybe they're going down at the moment, but this is maybe not forever. So I mean, they might go up again. There's still a lot of things to come. So as I said, we have to keep that momentum basically going, that not just because it's now this year a bit cheaper, we don't do anything. So a clear economic case, I think, is one of the key elements where we have to provide to the people. The second part is the facilitation. So we mentioned already, like how to. It's not always easy to actually loan or lend to those customers. So because you have to do a lot of assessments. So we have to have the information. We have the people in place who can handle this kind of lending, and do this on scale. And I mean, there are very good examples out there. I think like KfW in Germany is doing very nice work with project managers. Basically, whatever comes up, he or she will handle that. And this is really what helps then the consumers or the obligors of the loan. So because they know there is somebody who can actually help me whatever issue comes up in the architecture of my house. So this is, I think, very helpful, and it's also very well perceived in the market. And last but not least, it's also about, again, information. Do I have to really go to a house? And I'm taking O's buildings as examples, so apologies for that. But do I really have to go there and look at it and make an assessment, write a manual report? Do I have to do that? Because, I mean, this is really hindering the scale we need to have. And there, I think, with a lot of solutions now out there, which can really support that. Basically, I mean, just to mention one of those, where you have like a digital twin of all the building stock in Europe. I mean, this is not something which is out of scope. This can be done. It's actually fairly straightforward if you think it through. And then basically you just look at this house, you know exactly how it looks like, what the hull of the house is. You calculate your EPC. You don't even have to make it. So you know what the energy efficiency is. And then, for example, if you want to know as a bank or as a government body, okay, how many houses in that group do we have with label, I don't know, D? You know it. You know it, and you can really prioritize. And this is something where I've seen now quite some banks going into that one. So really starting from okay, we have a transition path set out now till 2050 or so. But now we go into the practical details, and they can take the data, really prioritize the customers they really want to talk to, and give them a nice package to actually get this renovation going, to get heat pumps installed. And this is really very much facilitated by these platforms where you don't have to send out a 50 questionnaire to customers. I mean, you don't get the data back. It's always bad quality. So you have to find different ways. And the good thing is with even satellite imaging or whatever, I mean, you can scale up nowadays very quickly. And I think this is something where we have to, this is what we have to use. We have to use the opportunity in Europe, but I think also globally, to really take these technologies into account and support the transition to a more sustainable economy.
Hello, Miguel, if you want to add a comment on what needs to be done on the demand side to stimulate demand from
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Markus. Yes, and basically education, so to make people and companies aware of the opportunity of the invest in energy efficiency, long term, and that means long-term loans, and to think about the long term always, that you recover the investment in the long term, and it's not always quite easy for privates and also for companies that are focused on the business, but they don't understand about kilowatt hours or solar rooftop or whatever, or isolation, and make it simpler. Yeah, so that for the same reason, if you have a conversation with the financial department of the company, you need to have a very simple conversation and make a very simple product that maybe ideally if the utility company say to the private of the company, instead of provide you bill for your electricity consumption, I'm going to reduce your bill in 10-20% in the next 10 years, 15 years. And the concept of your bill will be changed. It's instead of energy consumption, that means CO2 emissions, that means fossil fuels, that means dependency on other countries, etc., etc. Your bill, you will see an investment in energy efficiency and make it very simple with a very simple solution. Probably we can boost the demand.
And just a question, because we mentioned the word several times during not only this panel, the word data. We had this conversation before about climate data. It's difficult to get them. It's difficult to get them from clients or accurate data. What is the view on the energy efficiency data? Do we have challenges there as well? Similar challenges, different challenges? Markus, you want to?
Okay, then maybe I started the colors.
As you.
Okay. So yes. So let's say I think first of all, I mean, I always hear there is not enough data, we don't know, so we cannot act. I think this is simply wrong. So I mean, there is data out there, and one can act even with, let's say, not complete information. This is what humans can do actually. So we can act. That's the first baseline. When we look at the specific situation, like in Europe, I mean, what we found is really there are tremendous amount of different initiatives, projects, data sets out there where you can dig into and really learn a lot of things about specific aspects. So it's really, sometimes it's like country by country, or it's different methodologies focusing on, I don't know, the transport, the others on buildings. So there are a lot of data out there. However, I think what we're lacking is kind of this comprehensive view on, like, okay, what is everything energy related in a certain region? So, and then we can select the region, whatever it is in Europe. So if this kind of aggregation of data, this is what's really lacking, because we, let's say, when you look at the initiatives, there's sometimes not agree on the definition. So what are we looking at actually? What are we measuring? And it's very hard for the let's call it data consumer to find out, okay, what have they actually done? Then you have to read a lot of reports, and I think this is where this kind of sensation, which we've mentioned already, really comes into, because that we should know what we are looking at. And I mean, I think there was one mentioned the difference. If you go to France and to Germany and compare how the square meters of a flat are calculated, I think this can be 25% off. So you don't know even the exact square meters. So because sometimes you count and sometimes you don't account certain things. So very simple things which are not sorted out, and I think this makes it very hard to interpret, like energy per square meter. You know, so this is it's a lot of uncertainty which we do not need to have. And I think this is really something we have to work upon, getting the definitions right, getting the data together, and also making clear what this data actually means. Because I mean, it's not just we want to collect any kind of data, but we want to understand what the data means, such that I, for example, in a bank or even at home as a private consumer, can use that data for my decision making. And I think this is certainly something where, from my perspective, I think we still need a strong European perspective on that to get this harmonized. I think a lot of steps have been done. It's progressing, but I think we're not finally there yet.
And Carlos, I know it's not data in the EU, it's not your field, but do you want to give a comment on this European perspective needed for data?
Yes, no, I mean, definitely Markus is the expert on data, so that's very clear. No, but what I can say is that I fully agree with what you are saying. I mean, my view. I mean, first, I think data is fundamental. It's not for any efficiency in general. You need data to be able to do things better. That's clear. But this does not mean that you can act. So there are two things that you need to do in parallel. So you need to take action, but you need to collect data at the same time. And you can do that in parallel, and with the time you get feedback from the data you are getting, and probably you will be able to do things slightly better targeted. So I think we are in the path to improve things. So for instance, in the Energy Efficiency Directive, we are starting now setting reporting requirements for member states. So that it's going to help to collect more data on energy efficiency and energy efficiency investments, and this is very much needed also to better target the future efforts. But yeah, as Markus said, probably will not be able to reach an ideal scenario. We'll get all the data fully uniform, standardized. No, probably this will never happen because data is also a very complex thing. You're always thinking, okay, we are going to do that, we are going to collect all that. You start like this as a project. The reality normally give you, okay, a different reply. So, but okay, I think we are in the way. We all know that it is important. We are doing efforts to improve the availability of data, and I think it will come with the time. And there is very important element on data and digitalization, and this is strategic actually, because this can really help to devise actions that could be really targeted and could be even really fast. And by the way, and linking to what we were saying at the beginning, can really help stimulating demand.
Maybe just a quick note on that one, because let's say there's one thing which has been really worrying me in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if I guess everybody has heard about the new ECB guide on how data aggregation, risk data aggregation, with very detailed demands on how a bank, for example, should handle data, even making like the board responsible for data quality, which is, I think that's quite a word. What I have heard in a lot of discussions is, so actually like climate risk data or ESG data, is this not also risk data? Does this fall under this kind of, let's say, guideline? Because if this is really the case, I mean, this implies a lot of other things and makes us think differently about data within banks. So it's not sorted out. It's a discussion which is ongoing, but it's certainly something which needs to be followed very closely.
I'm sure that the institutions present here are following very closely, and we should all too. Miguel, just a take on the data or availability or need for data.
I'm not an expert in data of energy efficiency, but in general, I think that problem is not that you don't have the data. Probably is the large amount of data, and you have to collect and put in, and the accuracy. So the accuracy of this data. But probably we have enough information to take a decision. So of course, maybe it's not too accurate, but enough. I don't think this is the real problem for energy efficiency.
Well, thank you. I think we will have some time for questions from the audience. I see already a hand, but maybe is there a final comment before we give the floor? Okay, so there's a gentleman there. Same.
Hi, this is Carlos Barrientos from CaixaBank. I was having a question with regards to, I think bureaucracy. It's something, that issue that needs to be solved when because I think we are getting ready to provide those services. And on the demand side, many times on this blended finance, we really find hard to get through the projects. We have the clients asking for those, and then it takes time to implement those measures. On the other hand, and with regards to standards, taxonomy considers a line if there's an A certificate. And also there's certain measures in terms of primary energy consumption demand. But we've been not talking these days about transitioning, and if you look into only A label, that's that's like in the world of investment would be like the best in class. But to help transitioning, and if we want to get every inch of gain in energy efficiency, maybe changing from a D to a C or D to a B, or having even a B, for us, obviously, we need to take that into sustainable finance. That setting, and then the bureaucracy thing.
This is a comment.
Well, maybe I can start. I think the first element was on the need to cut red tape and try to be simple and provide solutions to the end users that are easy ones. I think also Miguel, you referred to that, and I can only concur to that. It's also true that this seems to be a very simple idea, but then when you put that in practice, taking into consideration, for instance, different levels of support, like DU support or national support and financing, etc., could be a bit complicated. And on that we are working. So we are working on that, and because we consider it is fundamental that we are able to devise solutions that are easy to implement and they are easy for the consumer to take it. Not to have on the one side one grant here, on the other side to benefit from this other thing, I need to take another element that probably the timelines are different and I need to deliver a lot of supporting documents and etc. 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 So I think this is clearly an area. This is one of the things that we are saying now, that there is still, we need to create a framework for the future that it is more so it's better, and I think this is one of the areas. Simplification is we're always saying that. I think it's always difficult to really deliver on the objective, but that's on our mind. And taxonomy, I think it's there there are different objectives of taxonomy. For energy efficiency is a bit more neutral because it creates an incentive to an extent, but also creates, in some cases, a number of requirements, for instance, on financial institutions to be able to report and to collect. No? It's interesting what you are saying, because definitely when it comes to energy efficiency in the energy efficiency world, and also referring to our renovation wave, that it is basically the strategy that the EU has set to renovate the building stock. The focus is not on the best in the class, so the focus is on the worst performing buildings. All this feedback is important. I think it is true that at the beginning it has been relatively difficult for financial institutions to understand what the taxonomy is and how they need to report on taxonomy. I think it's improving the situation now, but in any case, all this feedback is fundamental for us because this is an ongoing exercise and it's something that it is subject to an evolution. And as you said, we need to find the ways to incentivize the renovation of the worst in the class, if we can put it that way.
Maybe too quickly, sorry, just one small comment to that one, because I think what you said, just focus on the worst performing buildings, that's of course always the starting point. I mean, that's very obvious, biggest gain in the short term. I just want to point out, let's say what our simulations always show is that when you want to hit the long-term target in 2050 or even earlier, the buildings which actually are the most difficult to renovate, these are the ones who determine whether or not you reach the long-term goal. So you should also take into account, I mean, sometimes you have historic buildings, you don't know what to do with them. And so, I mean, this basically lead you to target achievement in 2050 or not.
Gentleman here, there was a gentleman there.
So question to Markus, just following up from that point. In the last session, we heard about the principles for responsible banking, where I understand engagement with client is important, transitioning your portfolios, another important part of that. And many of the banks, some of those who've spoken earlier today, have a mortgage portfolio standard, which is exactly that. It takes the snapshot of the current mortgages and transitions them according to the national plan of the country they're in, or the Paris Agreement, or projection of future pathways. My question to you is, given what my simple understanding of what you do is you have 1,500 people spread out around Europe building models for banks and financial institutions. So I guess you understand how they look at data and how they look at modeling. You also mentioned earlier there's AI and machine learning that is somehow helpful to understanding and to filling the data gaps, really, and I'm a big fan of that. And I wonder if you could comment sort of how easy do you think it would be or is for financial institutions to use AI to fill in the data gaps, to enable them to sort of adopt a mortgage portfolio standard sort of really quickly?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, AI is kind of a buzzword, and everybody tells AI, but in the end, it's very simple because you build a data model of what you see in reality. So, I mean, this is a very simple thing. In the very end, it's a house, it's a plan of a house or whatever. You can use AI very efficiently in a sense that you can, for example, from satellite images, extract, okay, we have a building here, this building has changed. We can get the model out of the information we anyway have on a more or less daily basis nowadays. So this saves you a lot of effort, and this is what the AI part is doing, basically taking the pictures and making a model out of it. So this can be automated. And I think this is very helpful. This is what really allows you from a banking perspective to run it through your portfolio in basically a day or two. And then you have the information to make your strategic decision making and so to really simulate what's going on. And I mean, you talked about the minimum energy performance standards. I mean, let's say when my clients look at those data points, I mean, they anyway do a similar thing. Because they take the worst, is the obvious quick gain you anyway have to do. So it's a very natural prioritization of your targets. If you have the information, you can break it down to give your people in the front office a list of houses or customers that they should address. They can do it. So that's basically straightforward when you have the information. And for that, actually, yeah, like the modern technologies are very useful and they're being used. And I think this can be actually quite efficient and not too. I mean, you don't have to send the questionnaires. Let's put it like this.
Yeah, and I am extremely sorry, but I'm told that we have no time left for questions. So maybe if the panelists will take questions outside, so we can start the next panel. But thank you very much. This was a very, very good in-depth conversation. We just had an hour. Next time we extend it more. Thank you very much.
Yeah.